Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Well, hello there. Am I on? Okay, I didn't hear the... You know, this is my new way of saying hi. I didn't hear the intro. I just heard a beep. I'm going to assume I'm on. You'll let me know if I'm not. Hi. Happy spring. It's March 21st, 2022. And happy to be with you for the next hour. God knows what's in store. I'm the last to know. Run a loose ship here. I do have some guests that I'm scheduling for in the future. In a few weeks, I've got some really good guests lined up. I'll keep you in suspense until we get a little bit closer. What to talk about? Hey, last time I spoke to you, I didn't know something that so stunned me. I thought at first it was fake news, but upon further research, found out that in fact it was not, and it was the astonishing story that the folks of Churchill, who have waged such a seeming David v. Goliath battle against Amazon and all levels of government, won. Amazon is not going to build their distribution center on the former Westinghouse site in Churchill. And I was on the side of the upstart residential rebels. And I didn't think for a minute they would prevail. It's astonishing. Amazon is refusing to say that is why they pulled out, but I have a suspicion that is certainly a big part of why. You don't put that much time and effort into trying to clear all the hurdles you have to clear to begin the process of building such a large facility, and then just walking away. Unless it was determined that the local opposition was so persistent and pesky that you didn't want to have to bother with it. And it's not as if Amazon cannot find other undeveloped large tracts of land that will happily welcome them, I'm sure, somewhere in the vicinity, but not in a place where you're going to really, my mind, impact such a lovely community, residential community. So that was great news and truly astonishing. I happen to know some of the folks who were in that battle, and they're still in a state of shock. So there you have it. And, it's true. Allegheny County's executive, Rich Fitzgerald, the state senators and representatives from the area, outgoing Congressman Doyle. I say Doyle for coin and coin for Doyle. And if I'm doing it again, I'm sorry. It is something I cannot, for some reason, after decades, get into my head correctly. So all of them for it, all of them losing. And I see, in looking at why they thought it was so great, I totally understand, especially from Fitzgerald's point of view. And that has to do with money and money only. Amazon would have had to pay, just a substantial amount in taxes to the county. and that windfall was something that any politician would want to have and could see easily sacrificing, the home values and the quiet of a lovely neighborhood in the county for. That's my guess. They also tout the fact that a lot of jobs were lost, but I think that's bogus because first of all, those jobs are shit. Excuse me, and if Amazon needs another facility around here, they'll build another facility around here, someplace else. Those jobs will still be available. All I want to say. Also, last time I talked to you, I can't even remember now what it was I was talking about specifically, but I talked about the fear I felt as an old person. I mean, my next birthday, I'm going to be 75. That's 3/4 of a century. And in my family, it's not considered old because my mother's next birthday, she'll be a century. But it's old. And I look at myself, I see an old person looking back at me. And so when I forget things, I get a bit anxious that it is, a harbinger of some kind of dementia instead of just, normal aging process. And I must have said something about that because I got an email from Josh saying this. You're talking about forgetfulness and losing things. I'm only 49, but I worry how bad I will be when I'm 60 or 70. I lose keys, wallets, cell phones, umbrellas, gloves, and hats all the time. Well, now those are the ones, right? I have to tell you, I've never. It's umbrellas, gloves, and hats are the things that I don't think anybody should ever pay a lot of money for, because those are the classics that are lost. I can't tell you how many gloves I've at least lost one of, or for that matter, umbrellas and a few hats. Keys, not so much for me. The important stuff I've always hung on to: wallets, cell phones, maybe for a second, but always have retrieved. Anyway, this young whippersnapper of 49 goes on to say, in 2020, I lost 2 phones and 1 wallet. Jeez. I lock myself out of the house a few times a year. And when I had a car, I would lock the keys in the ignition fairly regularly. I once went into this is unbelievable. I once went into the gas station and paid $20, then got in the car and drove away without pumping the gas. I love that. The only thing that I do and have done more than once that's like that is I go into a cleaners to collect some dry cleaning that I have, and they bring it out. I pay for it, and then I walk away without it. That has happened a number of times, but you do usually, before you get to the car, realize it and go back in apologetically and embarrassed and grab it. But paying for gas and then getting in your car and driving away, that's wonderful. I love this. And he finishes up by saying, debit card PIN numbers and usernames, passwords, a nightmare. Well, that we all will agree. A total nightmare. Total. God almighty. Yeah. But thank you for that, because I appreciate it. And also just adding to a little bit more. God, hello. This is my Monday mind trying to kick into action. Adding on is what I think I wanted to say. Adding on to another topic we had discussed last time we spoke, and that is the United States Senate actually, finally, unbelievably, unanimously doing something. And what was it? To make daylight saving time permanent. And I mentioned on Thursday that sleep experts who saw that news went nuts because they said, geez, there were three choices. There were three choices. They could have left things as they were with changing twice a year. They could have chosen what they did, or they could have chosen to make regular, normal, standard time the time. And they chose the absolute wrong one. Well, the good news is that more and more people are realizing that, are reacting to it, and one is hoping, and there are early signs that the House of Representatives, which now must take on the issue, is going to be on the receiving end of actual information before they do this thing or don't do it. And it is quite possible that they will stymie this. And it is quite possible, in fact, that they won't even bother dealing with it, since they realize there are more important things to do. But we did talk about how that our bodies have evolved over millions of years to be absolutely attuned to the sun's rhythm. And so when we wake and we see sunlight in the morning, it trips off all these chemicals in our brains, and that coordinates with all kinds of other things in our mental and physical being. And shifting of our clocks every two biannually does take a toll, because we can mess with the clock's hands, but we can't mess with our bodies and what our bodies are attuned to. And so every time we do that, every time we mess with the clock's hands, we raise stress levels, we raise inflammation in the body, our sleep gets shortened, depression increases. It's been well documented that in the weeks following when we change, as we just did, to daylight saving time, the incidence of heart attacks increase and strokes go up significantly. Fatal car crashes as well. And that I assume would be all about sleep deprivation. But all that is not to say that it might be a great idea to stop doing this clock changing and to decide to keep the clock at one spot. But all sleep experts say the way to keep it is at standard time, not so-called daylight saving time, which is particularly dangerous for young people, for teenagers who are already, their bodies are already giving them so much difficulty. Their melatonin, which is the thing that makes you drowsy, in a teenager's body, it goes up later in the evening, making them want to go to sleep later and wake up later than adults. And so what do? We start high school classes at the earliest possible time, which is, we've known for ages, is absolutely wrong. And do we change it? No, we never do. So these poor kids are, really, really sleep deprived constantly. And that also risks higher rates of accidents and depression and moodiness. And as any parent of a teenager can say, you don't want to add to what is already a difficult period of development. An article in The Atlantic said that today's adolescents are already the most sleep deprived population in human history. God. 1 in 5 sleeps 5 or few hours a night. Wow. And a sleep deprived brain is just not functioning as well as it needs to. So again, just call your congressperson. We do not want this unanimously idiotic move by the U.S. Senate to stand because it's not healthy. It's as if these people think that by making it daylight saving time, they're actually adding sunlight, right? That's in their heads. I think that's what they think. We can give people an hour more of sunlight by doing this. Don't you think that's really what people think? I mean, if they thought twice, they'd realize that that's, of course, absurd. Because there's the same amount of sunlight, no matter what time you say it is. But if you do this daylight saving time all the time in some parts of the country, the sun is not going to come up until 9 a.m. I'm just saying, stupid. Standard time follows the natural human body's way. Our bodies have already told us to follow the sun, and our clocks should do the same. All right, I'll get off my high horse about that, but let us hope, really, that the House of Representatives saves us from this idiocy. Okay. What else? Oh, speaking of idiocy, this made me crazy. Perhaps you saw that there's another new disease. We label things diseases all the time that are not, that are just natural, and we call them diseases. Actually, one of the guests I book is going to jump on the idea that so many of us have bought into, because the experts have told us to, that addiction is a disease, that alcoholism is a disease. And he'll say, bull, not a disease. And he makes a very compelling case for who decided to call it a disease, why they decided to call it a disease. And now we have another disease that's been created. It's called grief. The people who decide what a disease is, and these would be the same ones, that would be the American Psychiatric Association. Is that the actual group? They have now decided that grief, well, actually, prolonged grief, is a mental disease. And since grief is such a personal thing, you got to wonder who gets to decide when grieving should end. And why would you think that every person in the world would grieve in the same way or for the same length of time? I mean, there can be no more personal a thing than grieving over the loss of a loved one. And that anyone, including a bunch of so called experts, can decide how long is too long is to me outrageous. Why aren't I hearing myself? I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not hearing myself in my headset and haven't. I kept wondering, why does this show sound different? It sounds different because I'm not hearing myself. And I don't know why that is. And if there's anything back at the fort, switch that can get flipped that might be part of the reason, I'd appreciate it. Because I really can't hear myself. But I'm just outraged by this. I know people who have lost the love of their lives, a spouse, and who have grieved for years. It doesn't mean they've completely, I mean, they've obviously functioned. They get up and even go to work and stuff like that. But to say that, and what these guys are saying is that if you are still grieving after 1 year, that's what they decided. They drew the line at 1 year. How nice that it just works exactly with the calendar. Everybody is given 365 days to grieve. And if you are still grieving at 366, well, you're sick. That is, I'll tell these psychiatrists what's nuts. That's nuts. God almighty. And so they've actually put this, they've codified it and put it into the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And you know what that means? That means it's now an official disease. And that means that they can bill insurance companies for treating people for grieving too long. Now, I'm sure, again, all of us may or may not, I always say that, I think all of us may know somebody who we feel has grieved too long. But it's not for us to say, and if they feel that their lives have gone off the rails with this loss, then I understand why you might seek out therapeutic help. But to call it a mental disorder and to draw red lines, who gets to decide how long is prolonged? And the fact that they have the gall to literally set a time limit is, I mean, it's totally arbitrary, totally subjective, right? And I'll tell you what else it is. It's cruel. Because it puts pressure on people who are already grieving, for God's sake. To get on with it. To do it properly. Unbelievable. And here's the winners in this, because it ain't regular people. There are two big winners in making prolonged grief a mental disease. First, obviously, therapists, shrinks, therapists, because now they have it, as I said, in the DSM, and now they can see people for this, and it'll be reimbursed by insurance companies. I'm sure insurance companies aren't too thrilled about this. Speaking of grief, my God, insurance executives are in deep grief over this. Something tells me they'll get over it in time, not to be said to have a disease. Oh, fuck it, Doug. All right. I don't know what to say, guys. I guess I'll keep talking for a while. Let me know if you get me back. But I'm getting fed up. I am. I wonder if that's a mental disorder. Like when you can be fed up. And at what point is being fed up go from just being fed up to showing that you're mentally ill? No one's telling me I'm back, so I'm going to assume I'm not. Hello, I'm back. Well, where the hell did I go? Hi. I don't know. Thank you all for telling me. I don't know what you missed. Probably not much. I don't know if my caller's still there. I see I have one. We can try. Hey, caller, are you there through all this, Michigas? Huh? Hello?
Lynn.
No. Yes.
Lynn, good morning.
Geez, hi. Nice to hear from you.
I never lost you at all.
Well, because you were on the phone.
Correct. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, I called in before you had actually gotten about halfway through your kind of explanation about the grief issue. And then you ended up covering so much of what I wanted to say, but I decided to hang on the line and kind of reiterate it anyway. Here's the thing. As a mental health therapist for many, many years, I have long kind of chastised many of my colleagues who will agree to see people during periods of what I consider to be normal grief. So, for example, I have had clients come in to see me for the first session, and you talk about what's your concern, what's going on, why are you here, and so on. And a person might say something like, my father died 2 weeks ago and I'm still crying.
Oh.
And I say, yes, and your problem is,
Jeez,
of course,
wow.
not in that tone.
No,
but the whole point is when people present what are very normal symptoms to very natural, normal situations, that is not an illness. And I basically say to them, as I have to many people, you are experiencing normal grief. That is a normal thing. It is not a condition to be treated for. Go maybe read a couple books, go, do some other things. But I also say, if this does not resolve in a period of, a few months, a significant period of time to the point where you are still struggling and want to get beyond, because your symptoms might be impairing your work or your family functioning, where you might want to talk about this and to get a little more help kind of getting through it, then you can come back and maybe we can talk again.
But it would be on their terms, and it would not be called a disease.
Of course. I would not call it a disease. I never call anything a disease that I try to treat people for. I try to talk from the position of symptoms. What are you experiencing? What is going on for you? And let's try to address those symptoms, those behaviors, those concerns, whatever you're expressing, and not label it any. I rarely even refer to a formal diagnosis when I'm talking to clients. But here's the thing. When you work in the insurance world and the insurance is your payer, you have to associate a diagnosis from the DSM-5 with virtually everyone that you see, or you will basically be working for free. And of course, unless you want to be a cash paying, which there are a few around therapists that take cash only payments, and then you don't have to get into anything about diagnosis or anything like that. But if you are, in an insurance network, which I would say probably 90+% of therapists are these days, where that's where your income is coming from, that's kind of the game that you have to play. And that part of it has really not changed for, oh my goodness, 50 years, frankly. The part about kind of the kind of medicalizing everything, that has changed somewhat. And the only thing that I would, these things are all relative. They all change over time. The only thing I would remind you of, which you know very well because you've talked about it before, is that at one point, homosexuality was also considered a disease, and now no longer is, according to the DSM-5.
That's right.
So,
right.
So some of these things come, and some of them go, and
some of them do terrible damage, as classifying homosexuality as a disease did,
of course,
as doing this with grief does. Really.
Right.
It's like medicalizing life, for God's sake.
That's right. Well, you were talking earlier, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to take up too much time here, but you were talking earlier about you're going to have a guest to talk about addiction and so on. I've worked in the addiction field for, again, more than 40 years. And this question was a question when I started my career, and it'll remain a question until the day we all die, which is it or isn't it a disease? And so any behavior that you can talk about, whether it's gambling, whether it's pornography, whether it's sex, whether it's alcohol, anything that crosses a line that goes into a certain level of extreme has tended to be categorized as a disease. And people have argued about that for hundreds of years. I think it was Benjamin Rush, one of the signers of the Declaration, physician, in the 1700s that first classified alcoholism as a disease. He talked about that. And, St. Francis Hospital here in Pittsburgh, on the site before where the Children's is now, they were the first hospital in the country in the early 1900s to treat people with alcoholism as a quote unquote disease. So there's a fascinating and very long history to that particular question. I hope I'm looking forward to hearing whoever your guest is going to be. I'm really looking forward to that discussion. So that's all. I won't take any more of your time.
Hey, thank you. Great call. I appreciate it. Thank you. This from Jonathan. I remember seeing a doctor years ago on Phil Donahue. He said, if you forget where you put your keys, that's just normal forgetfulness. But if you forget what a key is or what a key does, that's a problem. Well, I do recall somebody also saying that if you can't find your keys and then you finally find them in the freezer or the refrigerator, that could be somewhat of a troubling sign too, I guess, right? I don't know. we all should make our own choices about this. I'm sorry for our loss of whatever that was for a moment. But yes, as to me, my problem has not been resolved. And it's driving me nuts. I'm fully plugged in. All my volume things are fully up. And while I heard the caller beautifully, I just can't hear my own voice. So and heaven knows, I'm just dying to hear the dulcet tones of Lynn Cullen. I want to say something. I want to say something. Oh, now there's a shocker. But I do. I want to say something that I've noticed for a while now. I was initially incredulous, and it has continued so consistently that I must now note it. And that is the Post-Gazette, the local paper here, one of them in Pittsburgh, taken over by a Trump-loving lunatic who has since been, I don't know what's happened to that guy. I mean, I think he's still on the masthead and everything, but he sure doesn't seem to be running the paper anymore. And his lieutenant, who was brought in, who was running things, and the paper became so noxious in so many ways that I and a whole bunch of others simply stopped subscribing to it. But I must say, because I get it on the sly, I must say that the editorials now in the Post-Gazette are often just flat out, dead on, wonderful. And I looked up who the new guy is, and the editorial page editor is a man with a big heart, clearly, and a good head, and his name is Jeffrey Garrett. He is the editorial page editor of the PG. And I've just been blown away that for the first time in years and years and years and years, I can read a PG editorial and not gag. If they would just get rid of the editorial cartoonists they have, who fit nicely with the old iteration of the PG, the proto-fascistic iteration, then things would be wonderful again. But for instance, I mean, I don't know, sometime I think this weekend, that the editorial was about, patting on the back all of our wonderful Congress people, senators alike, who were so moved by Volodymyr Zelensky's address to them. I mean, some with clear tears in their eyes, and how they all then demanded that we do more. We must do more. Look at those little children. We must do more for these people. And here's what the PG's editorial says. The senators, however, have shown far less compassion for millions of impoverished children in the United States. And goes on to just pummel them. And let's be clear, pummeling the Republicans and Joe Manchin, because that is the group, all Republicans and Joe Manchin, ensuring that the child tax credit died. The child tax credit. Families aren't getting it anymore. Almost immediately after it passes is that monthly payment to families with children. Almost immediately, child poverty in this country was cut by 30%. And the opposite is what happened when the calendar year turned. And because of the Republicans and Joe Manchin, those checks stopped coming. So those children fell back into poverty. Nearly 20% of American children live in poverty. That is akin to the rate in Mexico. For those of you who look down your noses at Mexico, okay? In Pennsylvania alone, that program, which no longer exists because of Joe Manchin and all Republican senators, helped 1.5 million families, 2.5 million children. Keeping them from hunger, keeping them from the stress of instability and deprivation. Where is the compassion? Where are the tears for the lives of American children by these Republicans and Joe effing Manchin? There was an attempt to extend it, and it went down because of the Republicans and Joe Manchin opposing the bill. Your Senator Toomey and Senator Romney and all of those good Republicans, down it went. And the Post-Gazette's new editorial editor says, by extending this child tax credit now, making it permanent, these senators can fulfill the nation's moral responsibilities in Ukraine and on the home front. You would never have seen that editorial a year ago. So I want to give a heads up to those who may have left the PG because of its editorial content, to know that it is a much kinder, gentler, and totally less Trumpian editor that's in charge. So, hey, I have a question. Because economics is not my strong suit. But what? Okay, so gas prices went sky high when Putin invaded Ukraine. And crude oil went initially, poof, what was it, up to like $130 a barrel? I mean, I don't know. But then almost immediately it dropped back down to 99, under 100. The gas prices, which had gone, did they come down when crude prices went down? I'm asking. No, they didn't. And that leaves me to wonder what's going on here. I thought market forces, I mean, again, as I understand them, if the price of crude goes down, then the price of gas at the pump should go down, and vice versa. I'm sure that's true. But the thing that happens constantly in this rigged marketplace, and it ain't rigged on our behalf, believe me, is that when prices, wholesale prices go up. Retail prices, go up. When wholesale prices go down, resale prices go up. Or, in the best of all possible worlds, don't go down. And I don't see any report. What I'm thinking is the gas companies are engaging essentially in war profiteering right now, in price gouging. There's a lot of names for it, and I thought it was illegal, wasn't it? It sure as hell is immoral. And I'm wondering why we're not hearing. I'm not reading anything about it. Oh man, I can't see a day go by without some story about the horrific gas prices. But I never see this rather important aspect of the story, which is how come these gas prices are still so high when crude has gone down? Why isn't that a big story? Well, I would argue that because we have a corporate media and they think like corporations do. And they love stories about that make people miserable. And they like stories that quote angry, distressed humans. And they can be found at gas stations now. And so you see stories like that, the impact on the poor person of these high prices, which is a legitimate story. But does our media bother to ask some basic questions like, is it Putin's fault? Yeah, in part. Who else might we point a finger at? How about the people setting the prices at the pump? The war profiteering gasoline companies that are making money hand over fist. You talk about a Putin fan club. Man. Here, this is from the New York Times. Gasoline prices are based on the cost of crude oil. There it is. Crude went way up and it came back down. Gasoline prices went way up and they did not come back down. That is why gas and oil companies are now enjoying record-setting profits. This is not the so-called Ayn Rand marketplace operating as we're told it does. No. This is war profiteering. This is price gouging. This is greed. That's all it is. Hey, I've been reading a lot about, and God knows we're going to be so overwhelmed by this. The race to succeed the aforementioned Patrick Toomey in the representing Pennsylvania in the Senate. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm a little, it is because I'm not hearing myself. It's a very odd feeling for someone who's used to having my voice brought back to me through a headset. I feel like I'm insane. I feel like I'm sitting here in my house, just talking wildly, and I don't feel like there's anyone else there. It's very bizarre. I don't know. Zach, we got to figure this out because if it's on my end, it's a mystery. And it makes sense that it would be on my end. As far as I can tell, I plugged in all the plugs. Anyway, I just want to tell you, my greatest fear is that the winner of this senatorial, the most watched senator race in the country, And with, the Senate hanging in the balance, whether or not Mitch McConnell, God help us, would ascend back to being the head of that formerly illustrious body. Even though he's the minority leader, he still seems to be the head of the Senate. Such a player is he. But if you look at the Republican side, I'm not going to go into that. Both these sides have extraordinary races now. Really. God help people of both parties in terms of figuring out who their best candidate is. But I want to talk about the Republican side because my sense is the most dangerous candidate is David McCormick. He's the guy you've seen he's got more money than God personally and through donations from other extraordinarily rich people. And he's spending it like nobody's business. Mostly now he's spending a time trying to take down Dr. Oz. And looking at the way he's doing that, I'm no fan of Dr. Oz, but Dr. Oz, as you may know, is a Turkish American. And McCormick has started to accuse Oz of dual loyalties, has also accused him, putting out pictures of like Oz at his dad's funeral, and he's a Muslim. And so, yeah, there's people look like Muslims. And McCormick, understandably, is thinking, hey, we're Republicans. I mean, if the people really understand that this guy they like on TV is a Muslim. And so he's playing that card, which I find despicable. But even more than that, this guy is vile. He is, I'm sorry, vile. He's the guy who ran one of the biggest hedge funds in the country. He's the guy, I wish I could find this stuff. Of course I can't. Who the Pennsylvania State Teachers Pension Fund went to his hedge fund and said, help us invest wisely. So they gave him tons of money, and guess what he did? He lost it. There are teachers retired in Pennsylvania who are very nervous now about their pensions, and there are teachers currently serving in Pennsylvania who now have to contribute more to their pension fund because their pension fund was so totally mismanaged. And that was this guy's fund. On his side are the despicable people that were tight with Trump, Hope Hicks, and the loathsome, oh God, what is that guy? Stephen Miller? Oh, they are helping his campaign. His wife served in the Trump administration. He has flown down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss Trump's feet. His wife apparently calls Trump so much that Trump has actually complained. Some people. So, I don't know. And strangely, why this David McCormick, while attacking Oz for being foreign born, actually he was born in Ohio, I think, and then went back to Turkey with his parents, and does hold dual citizenship. Now, if he were elected, this is Oz, if he were elected a senator, I believe he'd have to renounce the Turkish citizenship. Remember when Ted Cruz got out that he also was a Canadian? And he dropped Canadian citizenship. But Canada doesn't have the same scare value to Americans that Turkey does. And Oz would be the first Muslim senator, although he's very secular Muslim, I want to say. There's no way Oz is going to win. But McCormick, there is a way McCormick could win. And he is the scarier of the two. Truly. And there's so much money behind him. Scares me. He is scaring me. And I was about to say, his wife, McCormick's wife, was born in Egypt. Oh, but she's Christian. Excuse me. She's a Coptic Christian, so that's okay. You can be born in Egypt just so you're not a Muslim. And she's the one who's apparently running around with pictures of Oz alongside others wearing Muslim head coverings at his dad's funeral. Lovely people, the McCormicks. I want you to know who to be very afraid of. Very. Okay, so, here's the thing I was looking for. David McCormick was the CEO of Bridgewater Associates, one of the leading hedge funds in the country. And billions of dollars were invested by the Pennsylvania Pension Fund, Teachers Pension Fund, with Bridgewater. More than $500 million in fees the Teachers Fund here paid to Bridgewater. $500 million the SOB was enriched by and his company, and he pretty much almost tanked the pension fund. Now, he will say, I was not directly involved in overseeing the investments of the pension fund. He was the CEO. These people and their ill-gotten gains, and then trying to sell themselves as, well, billionaires and as obviously financial geniuses who will know how to keep the taxpayers' dollars safe. Yeah. What hooey. This is so important, this Senate race. It's so damn important. Do not let this McCormick win.